Greetings, my friends. Please consider supporting me in my war to save pop culture by subscribing to my channel and possibly even becoming a channel member for exclusive videos, access to Doomcock emojis, and more. And if you like this video in particular, please consider using the new Super Thanks feature and putting a tip in the tip jar located next to the like buttons down at the bottom of the video. Thank you for watching, and now, on to the video. I have seen the season finale of Rings of Power, and the best thing about it, it's the last episode we have to watch for a long, long time. Yes, my friends, I am delighted to say, at long last, this national nightmare, this affront to the Lord of the Rings fans, this desecration of Tolkien is finally finished, at least for now. I imagine we won't have to hear anything about this crap at least until late in 2023 or even 2024. This piece of filth has been a massive failure for Amazon, a squandered investment, and the most epic waste of $1 billion I've ever seen. I will be reviewing this tragic misstep for you in the video, hitting the lowest of the low points, but more importantly than that, the thing that occurs to me after watching this finale is this entire thing has been a dagger in the back of J.R.R. Tolkien in a way that is even more offensive than what we thought when you consider what they've actually done to Tolkien here. And I'm going to try to touch base on that in this review. But I will say, the real villain of the piece in this episode was revealed to be the bestest ever herself, Galadriel.
I don't think the writers intended that, but yeah. This whole thing goes straight to hell because of Galadriel. Not really what Tolkien intended, was it?
Oh hell no, Harvey. This is an epic perversion of Tolkien. Anatar, the giver of gifts, was the one who tricked the smiths of the various races of Middle-earth into crafting the Rings of Power. There was no fucking Halbrand. Galadriel had nothing to do with it. Galadriel was never hunting down Sauron as a warrior princess. The elves did see through Anatar. They sensed that this whole thing wasn't quite right, and thus they avoided the corruption that the rings brought to the other races of Middle-earth after they were crafted. Galadriel was suspicious of Anatar and raised the early alarm, but no. Any way you cut it, this is a travesty, Harvey. The entire series is merely more cultural vandalism, a gob of spit on Tolkien's tombstone, completely disregarding the history he so laboriously crafted for his own edification and satisfaction, to flesh out the background of this world, to lend his tales more authenticity and verisimilitude. You see, that is the greatest crime against Tolkien, one that I think is largely forgotten in criticism of this disgusting Amazon show. This series is based on the Silmarillion, which was in turn cobbled together by Tolkien's heirs after he died, just to cash in one last time off of Tolkien's legacy. But bear in mind, and here's the key point, Tolkien had no desire to have those notes published. Those notes were crafted by Tolkien for Tolkien. It was a passion project, a deeply personal one, not crafted for money or fame, but for Tolkien's own personal reasons. The history of Arda, the world containing Middle-earth, was something Tolkien cared passionately about. He created this background to make his universe real, to give it life and breath, but it was not meant to be published as a book. It was Tolkien's pride and joy, and it is this pride and joy of Tolkien's, this perfect personal project, that is being perverted, distorted, and trashed by these cultural vandals. This is the greatest sin of Rings of Power. And that's why this show is a dagger in the back of J.R.R. Tolkien. Think about it. This quiet, elderly scholar who crafted this thing of beauty we call Lord of the Rings, with all its deliberately published spin-offs and adventures, created the material that was bundled up as the Silmarillion by his greedy heirs, purely for his own edification, enjoyment, and satisfaction. But grave robbers gathered up his notes, crammed them into a book, and published what was never meant to be published just as a cash grab, and then, making matters much worse, along comes Amazon to take what Tolkien made for himself that was never meant to be published, and they further smeared it with lies and perverted it with extraneous digressions and distortions that removed it even further from what Tolkien intended, all because it furthers their purposes to condense 1,800 years of art history in order to squeeze it into 5 seasons. 5 daggers in Tolkien's back.
It's sickening, the greed exhibited by all of these people. They couldn't leave an old man's personal notes and private project alone. It had to be published with additional material from his son to bridge gaps in Tolkien's notes, so Tolkien didn't even write it all. And then Amazon took this unauthorized volume of notes and phony additional material Tolkien never even wrote and twisted it into something that doesn't even resemble the notes that never should have been published anyway, not without Tolkien's permission.
A bastardization all around, Harvey, and a sad one, and a disgusting one, and a disgraceful one. But at least for now, the bleeding is stopped as the finale of season 1 draws to a close. And how was it? Unintentionally hilarious, my friends, because what everyone knew all along is revealed. Halbrand is Sauron. Ta-da! Yawn. But the funny thing is, when Galadriel confronts Sauron about all this, he makes a good case that Galadriel is the real fuck-up in all of this, and were it not for her hatred of Sauron and hunting of Sauron, something that never happened in canon, of course, Galadriel revived Sauron, rescued him, brushed him off, helped him create the rings, and bundle him off to Mordor, making him powerful again.
So perhaps Galadriel is not only the bestest ever, but the worstest ever.
The worstest thing about this phony Galadriel is how her idiotic bullshit makes the real Galadriel look like a fucking idiot. Not only does this series slander Tolkien, it also smears Jackson's Lord of the Rings and fucks up the good work that Cate Blanchett did in those movies, creating this regal and unearthly goddess of grace and power. So, what happens in this finale? Finally, a bunch of shit hits the fan, way too late for anyone to care, and it's never terribly engaging except when Sauron is pointing out just how badly Galadriel fucked up. But let's go over it briefly. Last time, not much happened on episode 7 that wasn't either boring or completely ridiculous, which is why I didn't bother reviewing it. Galadriel managed to survive being slammed face first by a volcanic eruption of flames and smoke and emerged with an orange spray tan, but otherwise without a scratch, which is ludicrous beyond words and completely negates any suspense you'll ever feel watching Galadriel in this show again, because her plot armor is thicker than the entire writing staff of Star Trek Picard. Muriel gets blinded by the light, dressed up like a deuce, the runner in this Blight. Durin refuses to let the elves have the mithril that for some reason they need to not perish, so the elves are gonna head back to Valinor and leave Middle-earth due to, insufficient mithril. Also, there is a Balrog lurking around at the lowest depths of Khazad-dûm, just under the mithril tree, which is turning all the leaves brown. Thus, we get a very valuable gardening tip, folks. Turns out a Balrog is very much like aphids. If your tree has a Balrog, you need to get it sprayed, and probably exorcised. So anyway, the 3 white witches that we've seen trailing the stranger nab the stranger from the sky, believing him to be Sauron, and they want to serve him. He's kind of befuddled, he believes them. Then Nori shows up and says, No, you're a good boy, stranger, aren't you? Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. So then the stranger attacks the witches and banishes them back to the darkness whence they came, using his amazing powers. After that, he's fine and can talk finally, long enough to convince Nori to go walk the land adventuring with him in season 2 like in Kung Fu, which will be coming to Amazon, well, never, I hope. Meanwhile, Gil-galad takes a page from Picard's book and becomes a surrender monkey, says, okay, we're all giving up and leaving for Valinor because Elrond couldn't get the mithril. But aha! Halbrand says, well, you can craft the small amount of mithril into a circular form by combining it with other metals. circular forms like, I don't know, a crown well, I don't know, maybe rings? Oh, so much for Anatar. He's no longer canon. Now it's Halbrand planting these ideas in Celebrimbor's head about how to craft this mithril, but yeah, how the hell is this going to save all the elves? Well, somehow crafting a few rings will magically satisfy the minimum daily requirement of mithril laid out by the FDA for elves.
What are they gonna pass the rings around every day? Make sure everyone wears one for 10 minutes or something? It's stupid. What, a ring a day keeps the doctor away?
I don't know, I didn't write this shit, Harvey. So let's make a shit story short, shall we? This is a damn disgrace. A betrayal of Tolkien far worse than it initially appears, because not only is it perverting his authorized work, it's perverting a personal project of his that he never intended to publish, something he created purely out of love. So let's wrap this fucking thing up, shall we? There's an explosion in Celebrimbor's tower. He finds that the mithril won't blend with other metals. They try to force it and boom goes the dynamite. Galadriel watches as Halbrand suggests a solution. Do not use brute force, use seduction. You need the purest metals alone to blend with the mithril. Yeah, Halbrand knows a lot about smithing. And as Galadriel watches Halbrand offer ideas to Celebrimbor, she gets kind of suspicious-like. She dials up the Elven edition of Ancestry.com and researches the genealogy of the Southlands, and she finds out, oops, the line of kings in the Southland was broken, and Halbrand is not king of the Southlands. She confronts Halbrand, quoting The Who and asking, who the fuck are you? Halbrand smirks and quotes the Eurythmics, saying, would I lie to you, honey? I never lied. I told you I found that kingly sigil on a dead man. Now, I didn't want to go to the Southlands. It was all your idea. Each step along the way, Galadriel was responsible for saving Halbrand from the raft. She took Halbrand to Numenor and introduced him around. She saved Halbrand's life. She got Halbrand to Middle-earth. Good job, Galadriel, you schmuck! Halbrand tells her, yep, he's been around a long time. He was Morgoth's pal. He's gone by many identities. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. Woo-hoo. She tries to stab Halbrand. He grabs her hand, and suddenly she's transported into a flashback with her brother. And her brother in the hallucination tells her that Sauron was a bringer of peace, seeking power to heal Middle-earth. Yeah, putting the zap on Galadriel's head. The brother says, don't tell the elves about Sauron, let the work proceed. Touch the darkness once more. This phony brother vision tries to further con Galadriel, and thus we see that Galadriel was the real villain all along. Sauron was washed up. He was through. He was on the skids. And she saved him off the raft, brought him to Numenor, introduced him, allowed him to infiltrate Celebrimbor, enabled Sauron to start crafting stuff in Celebrimbor's workshop. So essentially, folks, cutting to the chase and leaving out extraneous details you can watch for yourself if you have time to kill or are tired of living, Galadriel was responsible for saving Sauron and getting the rings crafted. Galadriel, it turns out, through lust for revenge and blatant stupidity, is responsible for all the hell that happens afterwards. Behold, the quintessential devil in these matters, the worstest ever, Galadriel. My friends, I'm trying to joke through this, but this makes me sick. When I think of J.R.R. Tolkien laboring in his spare time to craft a history of Arda and Middle-earth for his own purposes, as a hobby, as a labor of love, and then being betrayed by his own heirs and publishing his unauthorized notes, and then allowing Amazon to take those notes and further pervert and twist them beyond recognition, it should make your blood boil. Fuck this show. I'm delighted that this show has failed for Amazon, and failed it most assuredly has. No one gives a shit about Amazon's Ring of Power. They put their own analysts to sleep watching the damn thing. The ratings are disappointing. It hasn't boosted subs. This is $1 billion boondoggle for Amazon. And may it drag them down into the depths of obscurity and failure. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.
Ha 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 ha.